We are reporting out of closed session. We have one item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, council reporting out of closed session this evening. One item, the motion is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Thank you. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Councillor Kim. Comments, questions? Record a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recorded vote has been requested for the only item of council reporting out of closed session this evening. Councillor Kim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Kim votes yes. Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson? Yes. Councillor Thompson votes yes. Councillor Humphreys? Yes. Councillor Humphreys votes yes. Councillor Gilliland? Councillor Gilliland votes yes. Councillor Gartner?
Yes.
And Councillor Gallo is absent. The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming bylaw. Want to move that? Councillor Humphrey, second. Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Mr. Clerk, time is 7:04. I will call this general committee meeting to order. We'd like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples whose presence here continues to this day. Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge and thank them for sharing this land with us. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, just for everyone's information, Councillor Gallo was to be in the chair. He's not feeling well, so he will not be joining us this evening. So unless there's any objections, I will be chairing this evening's meeting. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gilliland, any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no community presentations, no delegations. Consent agenda, we have two items. If there are no comments or questions, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Councillor Gilliland, second. Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Advisory committee meeting minutes. We have two of them. If there are, once again, if there are no comments or questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve both of those items as well, or all items in the advisory committee meeting minutes. Someone like to move that? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gilliland. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Items considering discussion, our regular agenda. First item, 9.1, Aurora Town Square Space Usage and Room Permitting Policy. The recommendation is that report number CMS 22-019 be received. 2, that the Aurora Town Square Space Usage and Room Permitting Policy be approved. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions? Seeing none, call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.2, report to designate 2632 and 34 to 38 Bursey Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Recommendation 1, the report number PDS 22-013 be received. 2, that council consider Heritage Advisory Committee's comments to designate 2632 and 34 to 38 Bursey Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act as properties of cultural heritage value or interest. Council, if I can just give my recommendation here, can we just maybe put forward to receive at this moment, have a conversation, and then we can give direction at that point once we have an understanding of how we would like to move forward altogether. So is everyone good with that? So I'll get Councillor Humphreys motion to receive, and Councillor Gardner, you'd like to second that? Is that fine?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys, did you want to start since you moved it? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate this being here on our agenda this evening. I know that we received some information this later this afternoon from the Era Architects in terms of what's on in front of us this evening. So just a little bit of history. This designation, a request for designation under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, was actually processed. What? I'm sorry, did I say something wrong? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, I was saying Part 4. It was just automatically in my head. Part 4 is Part 5. So
I'm sorry. Oh, okay, good. Thank you. So just it was actually completed last year, 2 years ago, by the Heritage Committee. So it wasn't that we're sort of backpedaling and trying to do this now before residents and developers and everyone. This is something that, to me, it's almost like a little bit of cleanup. House cleaning. So it was something that was done, and absolutely in favor was 3438 Bursey Street as a whole as the committee. When we met last Heritage meeting, the one before we had yesterday, there was discussion about 26 and 32, and they were designated by our Heritage Committee a couple of years ago, but there was some discussion that perhaps that would be maybe acceptable as to not be designated. That was just a discussion around the table. But from a overall Heritage Hack Committee perspective, we'd like to see these all designated.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Thompson, and then Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I guess just again, through you to Mr. Ramuno, I know you may not be overly familiar with this file, but just in terms of, I guess, process, we heard from Councillor Humphrey speaking, but, when I was reading the application history, we've all known that something was coming with regards to Bursey Street for many years now, but based on the report in front of us, it says that in January 29th, 2020, that's when the planning department received an application with regards to these properties. And then soon after, the Heritage Advisory Committee started working on an evaluation. Is that timeline correct?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. I think it appeared before the Heritage Advisory Committee on a couple of occasions in 2020.
Thank you. And then again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, it does state later on in the application history that it's currently under review and it has been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal as of November 25th, 2021. And I guess, based on your experience, is the fact that the evaluation of these properties didn't take place until after the application had been put forward, in your experience, do you see that as an issue when the Ontario Land Tribunal looks at it? Because we've heard in the past, concerns being expressed at that level about trying to circumvent the process through the use of the Ontario Heritage Act. And I just want to get your take on this.
Mr. Romano?
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it's, in my mind, it's not an issue. I mean, what's before the tribunal now are the planning applications. My understanding is, and I sat in on a couple of the recent Heritage Advisory Committees, and it seems like they had made the request to bring these forward for council's consideration to deal with the actual request for designating of the individual properties. Next steps are, and we've heard from the applicant's heritage consultant, it can go one of two ways. If council does recommend designation, the applicant has the ability to, if there's notice of intent to designate, the applicant has the ability to appeal those notices of intent to designate and consolidate those with the planning applications to be heard under the one file in front of the tribunal.
Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. And, I'm trying to separate the application from the designation process and going through the reports and the information, I can certainly, understand the desire for the one property, which was evaluated as a group one, so to speak. I struggle with the other ones that were designated in the second category. And, historically what we have done or haven't done, it hasn't always been clear. But I think that, if there wasn't a planning application looming in the background and we were just being presented this for the first time, my tendency would be just to lean towards the one property that's group one and not the others at this point. But I'm happy to listen to my colleagues around the table.
Thank you. Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little confused. Has the Heritage Committee received the presentation from the consultants about the new structure we're going to be using?
Mr. Romano, do you have that answer? And Councilor Gardner, which new structure are you speaking of?
The consultants we hired to do all of the go over the things that we've evaluated to date as heritage.
Okay. Okay, that's perfect. Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the town's heritage consultants who are reviewing our current list of heritage properties have presented to the Heritage Advisory Committee with respect to their work to date and their recommendations with respect to these individual properties. And we've identified that in the report.
Thank you. Sorry, this was the April 1st meeting?
Mr. Romano? Yes, I'm seeing he's nodding his head yes, but.
So, I have to go between screens and I'm not going to do that at the moment, but this evaluation when was this done? The second set of evaluations?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Heritage Advisory Committee, I think, the working group evaluated the properties back in March of 2020, and I think again in June of 2021.
Yep. Councilor?
Oh, so what we're seeing here is the original. No, I think in the attachments, are those the original evaluations that were done by the working group?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. This is the first time we've brought forward the comments from the Heritage Committee to council.
Councilor?
So again, I'm not sure I'm clear. So once the Heritage Advisory Committee heard from the consultants on Monday, well, that was yesterday. When was the decision made, if you would, to bring this forward to council?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was at that meeting. It was a meeting I believe in March of 2022. The last meeting we had with the Heritage Advisory Committee. Not this past April 1st, the previous meeting, sometime in March.
Councilor?
Right. So this was decided in March, and then the presentation from the consultants was made on April the 1st. And I guess, I don't know who the committee chair is. Is that you, Councilor Humphreys? Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could?
No, it's it's one of our.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. So, and after hearing what the consultant said, the committee decided that this would stand. The decision was made, I think you said March 22nd or in March, to bring this forward. I really don't understand this. I don't understand, and perhaps for members of the public, I'll just ask some questions. Why did HAC reevaluate the properties on Bursey? The HIA forms don't seem to be filled in properly. If the previous evaluations were not suitable, why haven't they used, we're going to come up with new criteria for the provincial standard. So why aren't we waiting to use that new standard that was discussed, I assume, April 1st? And I don't understand why these, or why would the three properties be reevaluated when they weren't recommended for designation in 2021, I believe.
Mr. Romero? Or, I'm going to go to Councillor Humphreys, just because she was there at those meetings, Councillor Gardner. And so I think she'd be better suited to answer this question at this point.
Should I repeat the questions, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I wouldn't mind. Can I?
You got the
I've got
questions?
some
Okay,
answers.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Humphreys.
You, Mr. Mayor. So this sounds very confusing, and I can see it's confusing for the public as well, because Councillor Gardner is correct. Our consultant has come in with a new way of reviewing properties and determining heritage valuations. These properties were evaluated back in 2020 by the Heritage Group based on our previously acceptable evaluation format, right or wrong. So it was done, and the Heritage Committee signed off on it, and that was it. What wasn't done was the follow through to designate the buildings. So when this became a topic of conversation through public planning and through our listed initiative, our listed property initiatives, which is very good, it's very positive. Heritage hacks. Well, why are we reviewing these buildings? We've already designated them. And after digging a little bit, staff came back and said, you know what? We didn't bring it to council for approval and follow through. So
Yes.
HAC felt that it was done 2 years ago. It was done with positive intent, that they felt we should do almost a house cleaning activity and designate that work. Heritage reviewed again, had the discussion, saw the consultants, the new consultants evaluation, and the majority were against it and felt that they still saw designation worthy of these buildings. And based on the incredible history, the Sisman Shoe Factory, and this huge history on this. We've been through that before, but Aurora back in, I think, 1924 went to court to fight to have that business come here against Markham, and went to, I guess, Supreme Court, and we lost. And then somehow they didn't go to Markham anymore and decided to come to Aurora on their own. So it was a real big struggle to get them here. Our Councillor David Griffith his father was the first foreman of the site. So I'm just going through the history. It's not necessary, but just to explain to Councillor Gardner in terms of why we're here, it's more of a cleanup activity, and that HAC thought these buildings were already designated and found out during this listed property, exercise and through the public planning process of the development plan to go to this site, that they felt that why is it being noted on any reports that they're designated? And that was how we found out that they weren't. It just never came to council for designation 2 years ago.
Thank you, Councillor
Gardner.
Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor. My recollection is when these were evaluated in 2020, the three properties we're talking about were not recommended for designation. And in fact, one of them seems to be almost falling down, and I don't think anyone important lived in it. 34 Bercy, of course, that I think we all agreed at that public planning meeting that was the important building here. So why go back and look at properties that were agreed weren't worthy of designation and then decide now to designate them? I can't make that link.
Was that a question, Councillor?
Oh, it's a question. So the three that weren't designated, why? And they weren't designated for a good reasons from the report that was done at that time. So why has it been decided to reevaluate and now designate them?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from my understanding and going through the history of the report, I think Councillor Humphreys provided a good sort of background. It looks like on 3 separate occasions, the Heritage Advisory Committee met, evaluated the properties back in March 5th of 2020, again in June 7th, 2021, and then just this past February 2022. And their recommendations were that all 4 properties, 2632 and 3438, be designated under Part 4. So I think the committee has been consistent in their wishes to have council consider designation of the property.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Runo. So my recollection is very different. My recollection is that 3 of the 4 buildings, 34 Bercy being the exception, that 3 of the 4 buildings were not considered worthy of designation. So from what you've just said, they were always worthy of designation, or is this evaluation in February 2022 a change a change from not worthy to worthy? And also, excuse me, I don't think there's a working group at the moment, is there? Was there a working group in February? I thought we decided to disband that when we hired the consultants who were going to do the thorough investigation.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess just to be clear, the Heritage Advisory Committee, on 3 separate occasions have provided comments and their wishes for council to consider designation of the 4 properties. However, in the report, we do indicate that there were the applicant's heritage consultant and their report in a peer review. Their recommendation is that the properties were not worthy of designation. So 2 separate things here. Yeah.
Yes, I do remember that.
Okay.
Like I'm in the twilight zone, so I'm going to stop talking right now. If anybody else wants to continue.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Oh, Councillor Kim, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems clear to me that these buildings have a very emotional and sentimental attachment to residents because, history is history. It's, stories have been told of a location or physical building for, decades and generations. And so I understand the difficult decision that it is. Myself, when I look at the report, all but 34 is deemed, other than group 1. And I see it from that perspective. The third party architectural firm that the town hired to do the heritage impact assessment, they seem to believe that all the properties do not have heritage value from an architectural or structural perspective. And the only reason why 34 is deemed to be maybe an asterisk is because, they say the property has historical value or association because it has a direct association with a theme, event, belief, person, activity, organization, or institution that is significant to the community. So their main reason for even highlighting 34 to 38 is because of the emotional attachment, which really doesn't talk about the structural heritage value. And, the 26 and 32, 26, their comments are that, while the buildings display the Gothic revival cottage style, there are many better examples in Aurora that possess greater heritage and architectural integrity. And 32, it says, there's been a lot of modifications. The property has lost its ability to present or support its cultural heritage value or interest. So from an objective viewpoint, I don't deem any of these to be of heritage value from a traditional perspective, but I'm open to having 34 be designated, based on the third party and our own working group's information. So that's the only thing I can go by.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the first time? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Humphreys for a second time. Councillor Humphreys?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think, again, everything said is absolutely understood for sure from my peers. But just to try to simplify it a little bit more, before we hired the consultants, before they did their review and analysis, the Heritage Group did theirs just like they've always done before we hired the consultants, which, by the way, the consultants are doing an amazing job. They're doing a great job. And the working group got together and rated the 4 buildings. And they were all designated, maybe not as high as 34, but worthy of designation. Now, it's up to council to approve it or not. And that's the step that was missed. That's the only reason it's here, is that Heritage Advisory Committee, and myself included being part of that committee, we did rate these buildings back then based on the old Aurora criteria. And we felt that they were designating worthy. It was at that point after that, staff would usually put the packages together, comes to council, and we talk about it and approve or not approve. That piece didn't happen back in 2020. And we tried again a year later, and it still didn't come back to council. Could have been COVID, could have been all kinds of reasons for that. So flash forward, we've got a development there, and the developers feel that there's no context to do with designation. They're not designated, but they were intended to be 2 years prior. So that's why we're here. It's just almost, I'll say it again, it's cleanup based on the old way of doing things. By the way, we still haven't adopted, I believe, the new way just yet. I think we're getting there. We're doing a great job. I love it. And yes, Councillor Kim is right. The consultants did come back and they did review these buildings and they felt none of them were worthy. We disagreed even at that meeting. We're allowed to do that. So, and based on probably the intent is the significant historical value. And anyways, from that perspective, it's up to council. Perhaps we can, we're just doing this to receive tonight. Maybe suggest that we can go back and just highlight a little bit more why we're here. Maybe not, and we don't need that. But from my perspective, from a hack perspective, to bring this forward, I know that they would like me to state that this should have been done 2 years ago, and it wasn't. So that's why we're here, based on the old criteria.
Thank you. Councillor Garner, did you want to go a second time? I thought you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I remember being very upset about this when it came to public planning. That application for public planning, because the developer said that nothing was worthy of evaluation. And my understanding was that 34 was definitely worthy of evaluation, according to the evaluation of the working group that was done at that time. The others did have some merit, but they didn't score high enough to be designated Part 5. And I believe that's true, maybe to Councillor Humphreys.
Councillor Humphreys?
With you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Gardner, what you're saying is the rating was absolutely not as high as 34, but each building, whether worthy or not from anyone's perspective, did pass into worthy of designation.
Councillor Gardner?
That's 2 years ago, based on old criteria.
Yep. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. And so my memory from the public planning meeting is that we were only concerned about 34 Bercy for all of the various reasons. And as Councillor Kim said, all of the emotional reasons of the associative value of the property and what it meant to Aurora. When we're doing heritage impact assessments, well, first of all, my question wasn't answered. when the consultants were hired quite a while ago, wasn't the Heritage Valuation Committee disbanded?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we still have a evaluation working group.
Yep. Councillor Gardner,
Okay.
I'm even seeing Councillor Humphreys nodding her head that we still have.
Okay, so that was still in place. And they did this evaluation in February, and that is the result of this report, or that's what led to this report. I'm clear on that.
Mr. Romano?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor.
Thank you. Well, I'm not on the committee, so, you know, all I can say is that I disagree. It was very clear that 34 was the prime candidate for designation, that there were many problems with the other buildings. There's state of disrepair and how they'd been changed. So I just don't know. I just can't understand this. And my remembrance is that the very first meeting of the consultants, that the committee was disbanded. That's probably in the minutes of that first committee meeting with the consultants. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, first time.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno. Aside from 34 Bursey Street, I know we had conversations about this report before it came here. And if you could just kind of shed some light on the integrity of the structural part of these homes, and your opinion, what you felt the conditions were in, just because from my impressions, just with the reports and myself even going to the doors and knocking on doors, seemed that, you know, there was a lot of changes and structural issues just on it. And I'm no expert, but just on the visual with some of it. And I was wondering if maybe you could just shed some of your professional opinion on that.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just based on what I've read and listening to the various consultants, I think structurally they're not in poor condition, but the appearance of both structures, you know, have altered through time. But again, there is still that historical connection with the original Sisman shoe factory complex, particularly 34, the two-story building, and also 38, the one-story building, which was, I think, constructed later on in the 1950s. But they were at one time the home of the larger Sisman shoe factory. But throughout the years, then they were separated and they were renovated. But they are still, I think, they're not in poor condition based on what I've seen. It's just a question of if there's any historical or heritage value attached to those buildings. But the committee has weighed in on this a number of times based on the historical connection to the original Sisman shoe factory. 34 and 38 definitely, you know, in the Heritage Advisory Committee's opinion, they've indicated they weren't proceeding to designation.
Council.
Thank you. And just as an FYI, I was very quiet, so hopefully the public could hear because I had a hard time hearing you. But I think I got the gist of it. Just for clarity, I understand that one of the buildings had a lot of parts that were added on after the fact. So does that mean that we're requesting the entire building, including the added on features that may not be as historical to the building as maybe the front of the building? If you could just shed some clarity on that, that would be great, on the Sisman building.
Mr. Romano?
To you, Mr. Mayor, if the decision is to proceed with the notice of intention to designate, again, I mean, you know, that designation bylaw could specify specific attributes of the building, but as you know, as the committee has commented on proceeding with designation, the intent then would be to designate the properties, you know, in their entirety. You know, register a bylaw on the property, which would identify the attributes being the two existing buildings, if that's a decision of council. But again, the bylaw can be crafted in such a way to identify particular, you know, historical attributes.
Counselor?
Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Thompson? Second time?
Through to Mr. Muramuno. Mr. Muramuno, in the report, it provides evaluations on all four buildings, 26, 32, 34, and 38. But yet the way the report is written, it often links 34 and 38 Bursey Street together with that hyphen to kind of give you the, I guess, assumption that it's really one building. But yet 34, as mentioned earlier, was the only one that scored within that group one category. Is it possible to just designate 34, or do you need to designate 34 and 38 together?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I think if council wants to proceed that way, the one property address or the one building could be identified as the candidate for designation if council chooses to go that way.
Counselor?
Thank you. And as a follow-up through you to Mr. Ramuno, should council decide to only list some of the buildings and delist the others, can we still do those recommendations within the report with regards to a detailed site and building documentation, a fulsome historical report, and some sort of commemorative plan to address the overall components while not necessarily listing all of the buildings, but doing a bit of a hybrid?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly that can be done if council, agrees to delist some of the properties with the condition that we receive full documentation and of each property. That's certainly an approach.
Counselor?
Thank you. Because, I certainly like that approach, regardless of the outcome with regards to those four properties. I do think that from, complete context, it's good to have those records, to do that kind of commemorative piece, because I think that the building itself doesn't tell the whole story, and you could put together some sort of commemorative plan to really celebrate that history in a more fulsome way to not just those people that could potentially live there if the building does get built, but also to somehow call attention to it and celebrate it a little bit better. I think I'm still of the opinion that only 34 is worthy of designation in my opinion, based on the information I've read, but I'd still like to see these other components carried through and added to that overall picture.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Council, I wish we did deal with this back in 2020. And the reason I say that is because I think that I believe I've been pretty consistent when we've had things come forward to us in regards to heritage. I've always said that we should never leave it in the middle. We should either designate it or delist it. When I look at these, I do agree with some of the comments around the table in regards to the ones that are group two. I don't see them being worthy of designation. And I wish that we did deal with it in 2020, because that's the decision that I would have made in 2020. And I think that as a council, we need to look at what would we have made as a decision back in 2020 and not try to confuse it or conflate it with the development application that we saw come before us and say that, now that whether we agree or disagree with that development application, now what do we want to do from a heritage perspective? Because we heard from the province many times that the fact that we're not responsible in these regards, and they want to take away the authority of us being able to designate things and look at things from a heritage perspective. And so we need to show the responsibility and why heritage means so much to our community, and only designate the things that are actually worthy of designation. I believe 34 is worthy of designation. It is in group one. It scores very high. It has historical value and meaning to our community, and therefore it should get designated. And we should look at moving down that path of providing designation. I mean, when you look at under 4.2.7 cultural heritage resources, the growth plan directs the following: cultural heritage resources will be conserved in order to foster a sense of place and benefit communities, particularly in strategic growth areas. This is a strategic growth area. we've all identified that this is an area that needs to intensify. But we also need to protect and foster that heritage value in our community. And that's why I believe that 34, because it scored very high, is worthy and should be designated. And I think that's the path that I would like to see us take. I think that's the right path. And ultimately, and I'll bring back in that development application and the discussions we had. And I think the majority of us, when we had those discussions, we all said that application, we all saw the need for intensification. We all agreed there should be intensification, but we thought that it should incorporate the heritage building of 34. And at that time, I don't remember any of us saying, and I might be wrong, any of us, oh, maybe Councillor Humphries, yes, I correct, maybe you did, but I don't, the other buildings, but all of us talked about 34 and that it should be incorporated. And so I think that by us moving forward down this path where we look at just 34, I think that speaks to exactly what we as a council and what our community is looking for in that area, is to make sure that we respect the heritage while we continue to grow in a positive fashion. So council, I mean, I'll leave it up to you. We need to provide direction. Absolutely, you spoke twice, but if you're just going to make me a quick suggestion to how we would like to move forward, go ahead, Councillor Humphries.
And I absolutely appreciate your comments and everyone's around the table. For today, this evening, we began with receiving only. At this point, we can move forward with, do we want to move forward and approve designation? And maybe we could vote separately, designate 26, 32, 34, and 38. Mr. Ramuno said we can do that. So maybe tonight we can take care of this issue before us, and we could vote freely on each one of these. And remember, the only reason we're here is because this is something that was done 2 years ago. You're right. I shouldn't bring in the development. I agree with you there. But it would have been nice to deal with it 2 years ago. Let's deal with it now. And now that we know everything that we do, we could maybe perhaps put in front of us, if everyone agrees, to vote separately on designate 26, 34, 32, and 34 to 38.
So Councillor Humphries, if I'm getting you correct, you'd like to put on the floor 2 clauses. One is to designate 34 Bursey Street under
Yes.
Part 5.
Yes.
And then another clause that states to designate 26, 32, and 38.
Yes. Yep.
Would someone like to second that? We're going to vote on them separately. Councillor Thompson, thank you.
And through Mr. Mayor, what that will do is we'll move the business forward. I've heard comments around the table, and again, I respect everyone's comments, but I do think there's an opportunity to vote freely, knowing what everyone knows today, if you do it this way.
Absolutely. So I'll call those clauses separately. Absolutely, Councillor Thompson. I know, yeah, actually, we didn't incorporate kind of what you were mentioning to Mr. Ramuno. So if you'd like to get that exact wording, I can get the clerk to add that in. Go ahead. And we'll see if Councillor Humphries is okay with that.
It's actually under the alternative. So should the vote go and any of those properties be delisted, I'm just looking to bring that alternative in, whereby, whatever one gets removed from the Aurora register, conditional upon the submission of a detailed site and building documentation report, a fulsome historical report, inclusive of properties both north and south of Motley Street, and a detailed commemorative plan.
Sure. Can we add that clause in, which is the alternative? We'll vote on that separately, because we would vote on if they both pass, then we don't need it. Yeah. But if one fails, then we need that clause. So we'll add that clause in, and we can remove it depending on how the votes go. It's a 4 clause, because we have 1 to receive. Yes. 1 for 34, 1 for the rest of them, and then the alternative clause that Councillor Thompson just mentioned. Councillor Humphries, you okay with that? Okay, so I'll just allow that to be added on as a friendly amendment. Thank you. So we'll just wait for the clerk to get that all written up for us, and we'll get it up on the screen, and then I'll call the votes. Okay. Councillor Gardner, let me know if you can't see the clauses once we put them up, okay? And I'll read them out for you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so council, I'm going to read out the ones that we're going to be voting on. And then after I read them out, I'll call a vote. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to vote 1 and 2. Or should we just vote them all separately? All separate. Okay. So the first one we're going to vote on is that report number PDS 22-013 be received. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, we're going to vote on Clause 2, which is that 34 Bursey Street be designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as properties of cultural heritage value or interest. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. 3, that 26, 32, and 38 Bursey Street be designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as properties of cultural heritage value or interest. All those in favor? Opposed? That fails. Next. Yes. Last one, we have that council remove 26, 32, 38 Bursey Street from the Aurora Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest, conditional upon the submission of a detailed site and building documentation report of 38 Bursey Street. Just, how about, can we cut it off there, Mr. Clerk? Okay. So we're going to cut it off there. So it's going to be, I'll read it one more time. The council removed 26, 32, and 38 Bursey Street from the Aurora Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest, conditional upon the submission of a detailed site and building documentation report. And a fulsome historical report inclusive of properties both north and south of Mosley Street and a detailed commemorative plan. We're good? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Not unanimously. Close, but not there. All right. Council will move to 9.3. Application for third-party event in an outdoor town facility, Aurora Palooza. The recommendation is 1, that report number CMS 22-017 be received. 2, that staff be directed to review and approve or deny the Aurora Palooza application in accordance with the third-party events in outdoor town facilities policy. And 3, that if the Aurora Palooza third-party event is approved, that it be designated as an event of town significance for the purpose of attaining a special occasion permit in accordance with the municipal alcohol policy. Someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Kim, second. Any comments or questions on this one? Oh, Council, sorry, Clerk, we need direction on that second one. I know I asked Councillor Gilliland, you moved it, right? And Councillor Kim, you seconded it. Councillor Gilliland, what did you want to do on the site? Did you want to approve it? It's that staff be directed to review and approve or deny. And approve it. Okay. Councillor Kim, you're good with that because you seconded it? Yeah. Okay. So we're good. All right. Any comments or questions? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. When we have these celebrations in the park, it does, the sound carries to the neighbors and, you know, it can be quite bothersome. Is there a way that we can aim the speakers? We had a problem with one of the restaurants on Yonge Street last year. Is there a way that we can aim the speakers so that the sound is more likely not to flow out to the neighbors?
Google?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the speakers would, it's hard to say. I mean, the band shell situated the way it is, the speakers would aim and project out into the audience. We could angle them slightly. It's just not likely to have a significant change based on the span of space we're dealing with, but I could speak with our technicians when it's town hosted events. We could certainly ask about the rentals and then guide them if there's that chance. We'll try.
Councillor?
Or something I've noticed about concerts in the parks, like sometimes they're very loud, and I'm not sure that they have to be quite that loud for people to really enjoy what's going on. If there's anything that staff can do just to make sure that the surrounding community is as least affected as possible, because we have so many of these events in the park, it must be difficult sometimes. Also, how late will this be going in the evening?
Furman, are you there?
I am, Mr. Mayor.
So how late will this be going?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the event is scheduled to end at 10:30 p.m. as far as the playing of music, and then their tear down and cleanup will begin at that point in time.
Councillor?
Thank you very much. That sounds pretty good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
And thank you, either through you to Mr. Furman or I guess Mr. Furman's probably the best one, but appreciate the report. I have no issues with it. I just wanted a little bit more additional background information. It did indicate that this would, if approved, would be the third year they're holding it. They held it in 20 and 21. It was well managed without incident. I just can't for the life of me remember whether or not they also serve alcohol during those times or not. And so I just wanted to get confirmation from Mr. Furman.
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they serve alcohol, which is the primary reason why this report is coming before council. That's one of the conditions that require us to bring it to council for approval.
Certainly, I was just looking at the past 2 years. I just couldn't remember whether or not.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they served alcohol the past 2 years as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Councillor Thompson asked that as well. So I think I'm good. Other than the fact, just to reiterate, we do have a history with this event. And we have a very good working relationship. So I understand that, reviewing it, we know what the boxes we're ticking. So moving forward, I think we kind of know what to expect right now. And I think we had this conversation offline as well. It's kind of a rinse and repeat. So I'm confident that moving forward right now with the approval is something I'm comfortable with. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I'm just going to add that the gentleman who puts on the event, I remember when he first came forward with the idea and presented it, and he had basically a binder explaining every little detail. And I think it was, and Mr. Furman, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think when we sat in on that meeting, you said that it was probably the most detailed oriented proposal to come, basically with your first time coming in and sitting down with everybody without getting some information from staff. Yeah, I see you nodding your head. Yes, because I remember it was a very detailed report. But you know what? He's done a tremendous job, and especially during especially the fact that it was both years with restrictions, and it was a successful event. People enjoyed it, even though with those restrictions and not being able to be at full capacity. So I can only imagine how successful this event will be, and how much the town and everyone will love it. Becoming an annual event. So I'm looking forward to it this year, and I'm sure we'll all be there to enjoy it. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.4. Application for third-party event in an outdoor town facility, Community Craft Beer Festival, Aurora. Recommendation, 1, that report number CMS 22-018 be received. 2, that staff be directed to review and approve or deny the Community Craft Beer Festival Aurora application in accordance with the third-party events and outdoor town facilities policy. 3, that if the Community Craft Beer Festival Aurora third-party event is approved, that it be designated as an event of town significance for the purpose of attaining a special occasion permit in accordance with the municipal alcohol policy. Did someone want to move this with either approve or deny? Councillor Thompson? Thank you. Someone would like to second that? Councillor Humphreys, thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. I guess first and foremost, I noticed that it was taking place in Matchell Park, but at the same time, there is a connection with the Food and Wine Institute. Just curious why it's at Matchell versus the town park where, the Wine and Food Institute is home of or located. Through you to Mr. Furman.
Mr. Furman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this event originally requested Town Park, but the only weekend that was suitable for them is for this event. We already have 2 activities in Town Park that conflict, so Town Park was not available.
Councillor.
Perfect. And then do we have any details about, how the Food and Wine Institute is going to sort of support it? Are they going to set up, tents and booths themselves to be able to complement this festival?
Mr. Furman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is my understanding that we don't have specific details, but my understanding is that the Food and Wine Institute will be involved on site, both from a craft beer perspective and providing food.
Councillor.
Thank you. And then finally, through you to Mr. Furman again. While I noted that this festival was previously in Newmarket and not in Aurora, have we spoken with Newmarket to get feedback on how the event was in past years? I know in the previous report you had mentioned that it was well managed without incident, and just curious if there's any history that's been shared with Newmarket that was be of value for us.
Mr. Furman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did speak to Newmarket and have confirmed that the reason the event is not being held in Newmarket this year is again due to the date and location. There's the specific date and location that the event organizers wish to have conflicts with the Pride Parade and celebrations in Newmarket, so it was not available, which is why they've come to us. Otherwise, Newmarket indicated that they would certainly welcome them back. They did in fact offer alternate locations, but the event organizer felt those locations were not suitable and therefore contacted us to explore options in Aurora.
Councillor.
Great. It's a win for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Furman. I understand there's 3 options here about directing to review, approve, or deny. And I understand in conversations, if we were to review as opposed to approve, it allows you to continue on checking the boxes and kind of monitoring to make sure and keeping tabs on the application process and the permitting process and such. Could you just kind of touch on that a little bit? Because I feel like there's some unanswered kind of ambiguity about this event since it hasn't been hosted here before.
Mr. Furman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation as it's written is actually seeking that. It's seeking approval for staff to review and then staff to approve or deny in accordance with the policy. The alternatives are listed at the end of the report are that council could choose to give staff direction now to simply approve it or to deny it. So the recommendation as it is for staff to continue working with the applicant and ultimately make a decision as to whether or not to approve or deny the application.
So I'll just weigh in, Mr. Furman, just let you know that the recommendation that was put on the floor was to approve it right now. Just to let you know that's what's on the floor. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. So just based on that comment, Mr. Mayor, so are we saying we're directed to review and approve, or is this just directed to approve? What is on the floor here?
My understanding, unless I'm wrong, and Councillor Thompson who moved it, my understanding was to approve it. Councillor Thompson, is that was your intention when you moved it?
Yes, the same as we just did for the previous one. We simply approved it and that was it.
Okay. Councillor.
Sorry. I mean, personally, I like the to ensure that the to review and approve remains as part of that process. This is a vendor that we haven't worked with before. This is simply not a rinse and repeat. I love the idea of having a beer craft festival here. I think it's great for our town. However, I want to make sure that they're following all the rules and crossing their T's and dotting their I's. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Furman, I think that I brought to the attention asking of whether or not this was a town event for various reasons. One of them was the use of our town logo. Can you confirm that?
Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a period in time going back a few weeks ago where the event organizer did put up promotion on their website using the town logo without authorization. Once that was brought to staff's attention, we did contact them and direct them to remove it immediately.
Counselor?
Thank you. And just understanding that this person has done these events before, surely they know that the town logo is part of our property and you need permission to be advertising that. If you can clarify, the town is not supporting or sponsoring a for-profit event, are we?
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the town has no involvement in supporting the event. We are simply, in this particular case, we would simply be issuing a permit and authorizing them to hold the event on town property in accordance with our policies. We are not a sponsor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just from our discussions earlier, if we were simply to just approve it without reviewing it, and when I say reviewing it, like reviewing the application and the process, if we're removing that part, does that eliminate the process in which you would be involved to make sure that this vendor is crossing their T's and dotting their I's?
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. By simply moving to approve the event, you are directing staff to do that, just that, approve the event. It takes away the review process from staff, other than ensuring any legislated or bylaw requirements.
Counselor?
Thank you very much. And while I really want to see this event happening, I certainly am not against it happening, but I am in support of staff reviewing the application and the permitting process as we're going through this, since we haven't worked with this vendor before. I think it's important to make sure that they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's. In your opinion, just with the experience that you've had so far since your interactions since, which I believe was in October, do you feel this would be something that you would recommend?
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I would recommend that staff be authorized to review and then make a final decision on approve or deny.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I would like to make an amendment to add the word to review and approve the craft beer festival.
That's what it says.
Well, that's what I asked earlier, and you said no.
Is it that's the exact same as the previous? That's the exact same as the previous. So that's what it says. It says the staff be directed to review and approve. Yeah, I know. I'll get back to you. People still want to speak. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, Mr. Furman, I understand that you had a comment to that. So is there a misunderstanding of what we approved prior and what we're approving now?
Mr. Furman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I understand correctly, the current motion that's put forward is a slight amendment to the motion in the report. And that motion, it would direct staff to review and approve. Whereas the motion as written, if we return to that, is for staff to review and then to either approve or deny.
Councillor?
Thank you very much. And so by the way it's written, because it was originally communicated, I thought review was removed from this. By maintaining the language to review and approve, I'm okay with approving it so long as I know that review process is still in place. So as long as that is what is being communicated in motion today, I'm fine with that. So can you clarify that that means that you're still having involvement in that process?
Ms. McDougall, I see you're like itching to speak, so I'm going to allow you to speak.
I'm hoping this doesn't make it muddier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. What is on the table has to do with the third-party events policy and permitting application. And what that's ultimately what we're asking council. Part of our policy is we need council's direction and approval to do that, to approve or deny this being a third party for the purposes of a special occasion permit. with any third party looking to book or facilitate any event in our town property, we have a numerous checklists that they have to adhere to based on evaluation of their event. Provided they meet all of those elements within the checklist, we still have the ability to say your event's not happening or your event is happening, because ultimately if they don't meet those requirements, such as insurance or paperwork, site design, site setup, we have that ability to still say no. So this simply is for an approval for the purposes of an alcohol application. It is not to approve or deny their permit for the event. We still have that within our facility permitting provisions. I hope that is somewhat helpful.
And thank you. And Councillor, before I go back to you, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you, Ms. McDougall, the fact that if it wasn't for the special occasion permit, this really wouldn't be in front of council, because staff have the authority to approve a permit as long as it meets all the requirements to have that permit issued. And if people don't meet the requirements, such as you met, liability, insurance, all that stuff, then staff would just deny it regardless of whatever council brought forward. So that's staff decision. Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity, because I felt it was very important to ensure that that review process was still there, since this is a very new event to us. Curious as to just a question. Do you know, through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Furman or Ms. McDougall, whether or not they're going to be providing any security overnight for the venue at all?
Mr. Furman? Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Furman.
Sorry, I thought I clicked it through you, Mr. Mayor. At this point in time, it is our understanding that they do plan on hiring security throughout the event, including overnight to monitor equipment left behind.
Councillor?
Thank you very much. Having said that, I mean, I do understand that there is policies in place, and I know that we need to make sure that we adhere to them. I really look forward to staff making sure that they do cross their T's and dot their I's, since this is new, especially since the use of our logo was used without permission. It does, to me, send some, red flags in the sense that we need to make sure that people are responsible and following those rules. Other than that, I am happy to approve this with the review of the application. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys. And then I'll go back to Councillor Thompson for a second, unless someone else wants to go. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. And many of my questions were answered as we were debating the approval or approve and decline. But just to reiterate again that when staff reviews the application, and as long as they adhere to all our policies, that staff will be in a position to approve or decline. Again, you mentioned that, but regardless of what we say here tonight, that's good. That's in good hands with town. They know what they have to do at the criteria that needs to be adhered to in order to move forward. I know. So just quickly again, I know you answered this, but how many years has this been done in Newmarket before they decided to try here because their venue is not available? Do you know?
Mr. Furman?
Mr. Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they held this event for 2 years in 2018 and 2019, and then suspended the event in 2020 and 21. They went to an alternate form that did not include a live event.
Okay,
Councillor?
Perfect. Thank you. That's good. So they've done a couple of years in a row. And as far as we know, they're adhered to all Newmarket's procedures and so on, and I guess regulations that we know of. I guess we've spoken to them, which is fine. I'm good to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone for the first time? Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Just following up on Ms. McDougall's comments. I mean, certainly I do recognize that it's here before us with the specific purpose of being approved so that they can proceed with getting a license for the event. And, I did note that, I mean, they want to pull it off on June 17th. They got 70 days from today to get their ducks in a row and get organized. So I think it is important for us to approve it tonight so that at least the organizers know that they can start working on those applications. I don't know offhand how long they can take, especially in these days, but I'm sure that the sooner they can get at it, the better.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I was just going to add a couple things. I think it's a good news story. I think it's a good news story. The fact that we have an event that was in Newmarket that is looking at coming to Aurora. I mean, bad for Newmarket, good for Aurora. The fact that they're also looking at partnering with the Armory and Niagara College. I think that's stuff that we envisioned when we had, the Armory developed and then partnering with Niagara College. These are some of the things that we envisioned coming to fruition, and this is great. I think this is great. It's a successful event. I had a brief conversation with the event planners, and they told me that their first year in Newmarket, over 8,000 people came through on the weekend. That's a tremendous number to be coming through our town and visiting, and or whether it's just our residents enjoying our town. And then maybe it's people that are coming to town and seeing what we're doing as far as from developing town square and looking at all the things that they'll be able to enjoy, once all that construction is done. But I think this is an exciting time, and I think this is going to be an exciting event. And also the fact that part of that conversation I had with the event planners is that this is not just a one-off. They plan on having this here long-term on an annual basis in the town of Aurora. So they're not leaving. So I'm looking forward to another successful event as we continue to move forward in providing more events for our community. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right. We'll move to 9.5, Council. Sport Tourism Strategy 2022 to 2026. I believe do we have a presentation or no? No, we don't have. Okay, so we don't have a presentation. So I'll read the recommendation then. Recommendation is that report number CMS 22-021 be received. 2, that the recommendations in the Town of Aurora Sport Tourism Strategy 2022 to 2026 be endorsed in principle, subject to council approval of budgetary implications. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Kemp, seconder. Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Sorry you had to come. And we have Erin here, and she was here, and we didn't even ask her a question. Erin, thank you very much for coming out, and thank you for all the work that you've done on this. Council, we'll move to 9.6. Updates to the proclamation policy. Recommendation 1, that report number CS 22-019 be received. 2, that the updated proclamation policy attachment 1 be approved. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson proclaims that it be approved. Seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report talks about a mayor proclamation, and that's the recommendation. What exactly does a mayor proclamation look like? Is it the mayor saying a speech at a flag raising ceremony, or is it a social media blast? Can you clarify what mayor's proclamation is?
Mr. Clerk.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's nothing like that, Councillor Kim. It's just instead of the corporation proclaim something, the mayor does it on behalf of the corporation. We found that the requesters are at least telling us that that gives it a bit more legitimacy in the public.
And I'll just add that they also want the signature of the mayor on the proclamation as well.
Okay. So from an announcement perspective, when it says it's a mayor's proclamation, you're putting an actual figure or name behind it as opposed to just the town of Aurora's proclaiming. Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. That was kind of my question as well. But there was I'm sorry, I don't have it highlighted here, but there was some language here about on behalf of the town. So is that, when you're generalizing the town, so does that mean that anybody could decide, or who's deciding that's the proclamation is something that's appropriate? Is it strictly just the clerk, or is there other people involved in that decision making?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just right now the authority is delegated to my office, so it is me deciding, of course, within the the context of the policy, if proclamation is allowed to be proclaimed.
Council?
Thank you. Okay, I found the part. It says or any town staff. So what does that mean? Any town staff or comment or for the request?
Mr. Clerk?
Sorry, Councillor, do you mind just pointing me to that?
Could you? 7B.
Yeah, that would just be feedback if it's something I might not be aware of, or something to do with a different department. I might ask just for a bit more context from another member of staff.
Council?
Okay, that makes sense. Other than that, the process kind of remains the same. But the addition is that obviously we're including the mayor with the signature and everything else, and that's really the big difference for now. Yeah. Okay. Right. Just want to make that clear. Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Thompson?
Thank you. Through to Mr. Duran. Mike, just to compare this to, I guess, other policies in other municipalities, is it in line? I'm sure they probably all have proclamation policies. Is there anything, I guess, out of the ordinary with this one compared to what you may find on average if you were to look for it? Just comments about that in regards to that nature.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I completely agree with that. We're very in line with other policies. They seem to be pretty similar across the board in that municipalities generally proclaim the same sorts of things. And yeah, I think it's fair to say that we're right in there with them.
Councilor?
Thank you. And again, through to Mr. Duran. And generally, in other municipalities, it is the clerk's role or responsibility to make that decision on proclamations. There's nothing unusual about that as well.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, from the municipalities we looked at, it's much more common for the clerk to make decide on the proclamations.
Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Garner, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I had a discussion with Mr. Duran today. I'd like to add something to this, which hopefully would make it clearer for council. And what was suggested by Mr. Duran, and I think it's a very good suggestion, that this report be referred back to the clerk or to staff to create a schedule of recurring proclamations that the town declares every year, and to include those issued by the federal government. So speaking to that, it would be nice every year to have just to know what the proclamations were going to be. And if something needed to be changed or added, we could do that. But also to have just a report for information to council at the beginning of each council cycle that would say what the upcoming proclamations were for the month. And the public would also have that information. And I'm wondering at that point whether the mayor might want to make it official that it's May is the month of X, Y, and Z. That would be up to the mayor and I guess any member of council. But Mr. Durand, I was looking at the proclamations issued by the federal government, and they can be occasions, they can be days in a month, they can be months. I stopped counting at 50, and that's when it was, I think I was only into June. So I'm not sure how we would decide what it is that we wanted to proclaim. Would it be something that we've done in past years, or would it just go according to this policy that we have in front of us?
Mr. Clerk, I'm assuming Mr. Clerk's going to respond by saying it's according to the policy, but Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yes, all proclamations requests are reviewed within the context of the policy, and we go from there about whether we can go ahead and proclaim them.
Councillor?
Thank you. So potentially would we be proclaiming 100 events a year, or would it go back to the clerk's office to decide what would be more appropriate for Aurora, or would it be what somebody brings forward to us that would be on the federal list?
So,
I'm sorry, Mike, I'm catching you. We didn't discuss this. I just didn't realize there were so many proclaimed by the federal government, or actually by Parliament.
Councillor, I would add, I'll let the clerk weigh in on top of whatever I say, but I think that traditionally what we've done is that if someone comes forward and says that they would like a proclamation, and then the clerk would weigh that against our policy, and if it meets our policy, then he would put it forward and say we can go forward with that proclamation. It would come to my office for signature, and then it would go onto the website where it would be where we would have the proclamation out to the public. But beyond that, Mr. Clerk, if there's any, I don't think that we just do ones without someone coming forward and asking us to proclaim them.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, completely agree with everything you said. If Councillor Gartner's referral motion does pass and the policy goes back to me, I would create a list of ones that we would do every year. So we would, regardless of whether we got a request or not, it would be on the list. So we would do a proclamation coming back. But I think I would probably, if we're looking at, multiple hundred proclamations that the federal government does, then I'd probably try to whittle that down to ones that are more prevalent in Aurora. I don't know if all of them would be, so I'd come back with a list to council, maybe provide the link of all of them, but then take my best guess at, or my best recommendation is what I feel would suit Aurora.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I know it goes on the website, Mr. Mayor, but I won't make it part of the motion, but perhaps we could have just a report for information at the beginning of each month, so that we and the public can all know what would be special for that month. I do have a question though. So this is something, would this be coming back to us in this council, or would it be the next council, Mr. Durand?
Clerk? But I guess that's presupposing that I haven't taken your referral yet, but if that passes, then I guess we would figure out what date. Mr. Clerk, if it passes, then what would we be looking at that coming back?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be tough to get it back this term of council with just election prep and everything that we have going right now in our division.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like your use of the word presupposing. Very appropriate. So then I have a question on that. We have in May coming up, we have Asian Heritage Month and Jewish Heritage Month. So these are federal proclamations and are important to the community. So this would, in the next term, come back to council. So in the meantime, would I have to make a motion asking that these two be proclaimed in May? Or could we just do it?
Mr. Clerk, I guess it would follow the same policy as what we do right now, is that if someone recommended it, you would look at it against our policy. And if it met our policy, then you would send it to my office for a signature and it would be so proclaimed.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, could I recommend it at this council meeting?
Absolutely. You can call up the clerk and say, I'd like to have a proclamation, and he'll weigh it against our policy. And if it meets it, then I'm sure I'll see it on my desk at some point and I'll sign it.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That's, in case I don't call you, that would be Asian Heritage Month and Jewish Heritage Month for May. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we vote on that amendment?
You want me to? Okay, so your amendment is to refer. Do you have? You have it?
Yeah.
Can I get it up on the screen so I could just see that, please? The report CS 22-019 updates to the proclamation policy will be referred back to staff to create a schedule of reoccurring proclamations the town will issue every year, which is to include those issued by the federal government.
Thank you.
Someone want to second that? Councillor Gilliland. To the amendment. Councillor Thompson?
Before us is to update a policy. This amendment is asking for a list of events. I think it's a stretch myself to correlate the two. If you want to put it as an amendment over and above, that's the clerk report back with a list. That's one thing, but the motion before us is all about updating the policy. That's what I would like to approve. As a secondary piece, if somebody wanted to ask the clerk to bring forward a list, that's fine. But I guess here's some of my comments with it is that, you know, we list all the proclamations since 2019 on the website, and perhaps the clerk can, you know, speak to the fact that in 2021, we did have a proclamation for Canadian Jewish Month and for Asian Heritage Month. How did they come about? Was that through requests, or was that brought forward by a motion by council? How did we proclaim them in the past? And I would assume perhaps regularly.
It was a request. Mr. Clerk? It was a request, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it was a request.
And we've not received that same request yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
As far as I know, maybe Mr. Clerk, maybe you can receive it and I didn't hear about it, but
I believe it's been received. I was waiting to see what happened with the policy.
So, you know, I certainly think there's value in the clerk providing council with a report, identifying some recurring ones that we would always want to be able to support or proclaim, you know, on a regular basis. But I see that as separate to approving the policy. That's just for informational purposes, advising council. I'm not so sure about bringing a monthly report to council in terms of the workload for the clerk. I'll let the clerk and speak to that themselves, because it is on the website. And if we do produce a list of recurring ones, I think so be it in terms of that one. So I won't support the motion as is, but if it were an amendment to the original motion that, you know, staff follow up, produce a list to council, I would be okay with that. But I'm not looking to refer this back to staff and further delay the update to the policy.
Humphries, to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm okay with the amendment to Councillor Thompson's point, though I certainly don't want the update to the proclamation policy be delayed a whole lot because of this. I also see proclamations being something that happens quickly, shouldn't be kind of caught up in a bunch of formalities, because there's things that happen very quickly that you may want to just set up a proclamation. For example, someone in our town could have won the Stanley Cup and we want to have Stanley Cup Day for this person today or tomorrow. So it really should be a very strong message that the mayor or, you know, from our clerk's office to be able to share with the citizens and have it, whether it's a celebration or a memoriam or something of that nature. So, and reoccurring ones, then, yeah, we should put them in a schedule and a calendar, and I should be able to go online and see, oh, this month we've got these coming up for sure, if we feel they're that type of proclamation. But again, back to the original policy, motion, let's update it and then perhaps look at the proclamations that we have, which ones we want recurring, and then how they come about in the future. But certainly nothing that we want to get caught up in a lot of other policies and procedures. This should be a very fluid, I believe, ask or.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, to the amendment.
Thank you very much. I agree with some of the comments around the table. I understand the idea behind it, and I love the idea of being in the know. I know that we've had a couple of requests and proclamations to where we felt, maybe we might have dropped a ball and didn't react right away. And maybe that's because we don't necessarily have that list communicated to us. Maybe it's just a communication ask, and just asking that every month we get, what's on the proclamation this month, just in communication. It's on the website. But I am happy that the policy has been updated. I don't necessarily want to hold that up, but I understand how this could be a subsidiary request to what's on the floor today. So as much as I love the idea of the schedule, I just don't know if it connects the two as far as holding up the policy right now. But I would like to see some sort of communication piece, and maybe that's just a request for that department to make sure that, you know, we're all on board and we're recognizing everybody, you know, that we have in our system, and make it really unique to Aurora. It is nice to know what's on the federal side as well, but you know, this is what makes Aurora special when we have our list of proclamations that are special to our town. So I agree with that.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, just hearing the comments around the table, would you be amendable to removing your amendment, and then maybe Councillor Thompson could put forward, or if you want, put forward what Councillor Thompson was suggesting is an add-on, an added clause. Are you good with that?
I'm fine with that. And
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, but I do have to say, this actually comes as a request from a resident. Our website is difficult for some residents, including myself sometimes, to navigate. So I was just trying to make that, but I found that most people know how to get our council meetings. So that's just why I added it. But Councillor Thompson has a good point. So I would be glad to second his motion.
Okay, so Mr. Clerk will remove we'll withdraw Councillor Gardner is going to withdraw her amendment to refer. And then Councillor Thompson, you're going to put forward. You have something? So Mr. Clerk's going to put it up. He's captured your thoughts, your essence, Councillor Thompson, and he's been able to put it up. So let's see if he's correctly captured that. That staff report back with a list of reoccurring proclamations to be proclaimed each year. Is that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, as the third, that's just an added clause. So we're still doing everything that we've already done, approving the update, and then this is the third clause. You're good with that? Councillor Gardner, you're going to second that?
I'm going to second that, and I'm also going to thank Mr. Clerk for his work.
Yes, and I'm going to, well, actually, no, I'm going to consider that a friendly amendment if everyone's good with that. Is everyone good with that? Just so we don't have to, okay, everyone's good with that. So I'm just checking how many times you spoke. Okay, yeah, you only spoke once. Go ahead. This is your second time.
I just want to be clear that we don't run afoul of the policy. The policy clearly states that proclamations are the realm of the clerk. It is the clerk's role to declare those proclamations. My only concern with bringing that list back is all of a sudden then it becomes part of the council debate. And then there may be debate on the table about what should or should not be included within those proclamations. And all of a sudden it's taking the responsibility away from the clerk and then putting it on council, and it becomes a debate about all of the various factors that may or may not agree upon. And then you have to look in the context of the policy. So I want to be clear that I'm fine with the clerk making this decision to bring back this list as an information piece only. And that should a member of council disagree or want to add something, as per the policy, it requires a notice of motion separately. I'm not looking to enter into debate about what proclamations should or should not be on this list. To me, that is the realm of the clerk. So I just want to be clear about that. I'm fine for that amendment, but I would hope that it's to be received for information only.
It's okay. And I get that. And I think Councillor Thompson, I think we can all agree on that it should be coming from the clerk's department. That staff report back with a list of recurring proclamations to be proclaimed each year for information purposes. How's that? Is that good, Mr. Clerk? Everybody's good with that?
And
no? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that was absolutely my intent, not
okay.
to have. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Very good point. Appreciate it.
Okay. What? You did only speak at one time. Now you're done. You've already spoken twice now. So I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor? As amended. It's up. I'm opposed. I proclaim that approved. All right, council, 9.7. Anti-idling policy update. Recommendation 1, that report number PDS 22-045 be received. 2, that the anti-idling policy be revised to reflect changes to the enforcement mechanism and to reduce idling time from 5 minutes to 2 minutes to align with surrounding municipalities. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councilor Gilliland, second. Councilor Kemmett, comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We have one notice of motion that will be dealt with at the end of the month at council. No regional report yet. New business. I will start to my right because I started to my left last time. Councilor Gilliland, no new business. Councilor Humphries, no new business. Councilor Kim, no. Councilor Thompson, new business. Oh,
Winter restrictions nearly over.
that would be public service announcements, but we'll get to that. It's actually in my list for public service announcements, but yes. Councilor Gardner, new business?
Thank you. We received information from Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority on a technical guide to the humane management of beavers in the context of keeping stormwater management features effective to prevent flooding, harm to people and property. And I mean, that's what our stormwater management ponds are, to decrease risk of flooding. I thought it was an excellent piece of information from the Conservation Authority. There's a lot of things in there that we can do that do not involve trapping. And I'm just wondering, I'm not sure through who. I assume we're going to be trying to put these in place. So can anybody on staff speak to it? If not, it can wait till the next GC meeting.
Mr. Downey, did you want to speak to it now, or did you want to maybe talk offline a bit and then maybe we can bring something at the next general committee? Either. Mr. Downey, if you're comfortable going ahead.
Mayor, I'm at your pleasure. I've already been in communication with the Conservation Authority about the policy and have some questions and some concerns with regards to their policy. The policy has identified some alternatives. We will explore those alternatives. However, the Conservation Authority has not been clear as to what level of involvement they will have in those alternatives. The Conservation Authority has been clear that they do not wish any amendments done to the ponds without a permit. However, they don't seem to have a problem putting in a beaver baffle. And so I asked a simple question: do we require a permit? They weren't sure. So I'm not 100% sure that the processes have been fully vetted with regards to what is and what is not permitted, with regards to any mediation measures we can take with regards to beavers. They also have identified a number of tree species that they say beavers don't like. Does that mean that when we move forward with approvals now in storm ponds, that any plants that they've identified that would be preferable by beavers could not be planted in the storm pond, or that they would not approve that planting? And they couldn't answer that question either. So I am concerned that there hasn't been some sufficient vetting moving forward with regards to some of these policies and how we as a municipality can deal with mediation measures effectively.
Thank you so much, Mr. Downey. And I mean, this was what do they call it? Technical guide is what they called it from the email that we got. And on the surface, it sounds fabulous because it certainly avoids us doing any harm to beavers through trapping. So I'm glad you're going to investigate this. And also, were you thinking about asking if there was any money coming forward from the Conservation Authority for this?
I think I can answer that. I don't think so, but
I didn't think so either, but I thought it was worth a try. Anyway, yeah, on the surface, it sounds fantastic. Thank you for doing the investigation.
thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to move to PSAs. Councillor Gardner, I'll start with you. Go the opposite way.
Thank you. Some of our residents, I would guess a lot of our residents, are celebrating special things this month. So that would be Easter and Passover and Ramadan. So quite a wonderful month. And I just wish everybody who's celebrating a peaceful and healthy celebration.
Well said. Thank you. Councillor Thompson, PSA. Councillor Kim, PSA. Councillor Humphreys. You have something you just can't, it's not coming to your mind. Councillor Gilliland, PSA.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everybody that the Aurora Cultural Center has a wonderful performance on Thursday night at 7:30. Leela Gilday, and she'll be performing at the Armory. And I encourage everybody to get out and enjoy the live music as we're now back to in person, pretty much everything, no masks. So let's just enjoy and participate as much as we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I have a couple. Since no one else wanted to talk about it, a reminder that while it might feel like spring out there, Aurora's overnight winter parking restrictions remain in effect until April 15th, 2022. So, Councillor Thompson, I hope that answers your question. Explore various spring-themed outdoor and interactive activities like planting your own spring flower, an interactive walking trail feature, fishing for eggs, plus much more during this year's Hello Spring event on Saturday, April 16th, 2022 at the Aurora Senior Center. And for more information, you can visit aurora.ca/Hello Spring. Also, the town of Aurora is holding, and I'm sure you'll hear more and more about it as it comes up, its annual cleanup event to help keep our community litter-free on April 23rd. So let's keep Aurora safe and beautiful. The registration deadline is April 19th. And so for more information, and if you want to register, visit aurora.ca/cleanup. And last one, the town of Aurora obviously believes, as we always talk about, recognizing our citizens who have made a positive impact and generously contributed to the greater good of the community. And we are still looking for nominations for any individuals, corporations, or businesses that anyone believes should be recognized at the 2022 Community Recognition Awards. And that nomination deadline is April 8th. And I will mention once again, Council, if you have not put in a nomination, I encourage you to please do so, because we all know people in our community have stepped up and given back, especially if not over the last year, over the last 2 years. So please get those nominations in. And that's what you wanted to say, Councillor Humphreys? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Gardner, did you want to add something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I know that our restrictions are certainly being reduced or eliminated. I would just like to say that many health officials and those in the medical community and scientific community are saying that it's advisable to wear a mask. So if you want to, please go ahead and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'll add to that. Well said. I think in certain settings, and we've heard from some of the medical officers of health in different regions, that if you are in indoor settings and it's a crowded area and you don't feel comfortable, put on your mask. And if someone is wearing a mask, that's their choice. And please be kind and considerate to everyone. So thank you, Councillor Gardner, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council, motion to adjourn. Councillor Gardner, Councillor Humphreys, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries.